50s from Marcus Trescothick, Nick Compton and James Hildreth saw Somerset fight back superbly on the second day of the LV County Championship relegation clash with Derbyshire in Taunton. It was the visitors who took control on the first day, in which they made 220 for 5 in their first innings after they'd speedily removed Somerset for just 103. Richard Johnson and Tom Poynton had ensured it was their side's day with an unbroken partnership of 93 for the 6th wicket. And they'd added another 10 to that when Poynton nicked off to Alfonso Thomas to end a fine innings on 57. It was just what the doctor ordered for the home side, and Thomas followed it up by also having David Wainwright taken behind for a couple. Derbyshire made it to 250 for a second batting bonus point, only to then lose Tony Palladino, who was LBW playing no shot to Thomas, who was bowling a crucial spell which brought him 3 for 19 in 6 overs. He then left it to Piyush Chawla to grab the 9th wicket and his 5th of the innings, as Johnson's vigil ended on 68 as he was foxed by a top spinner. The lead was at 153, not a bad one at all, but the more the visitors could get, the better, and so the last pair of Tim Groenewald and Mark Foote decided to chance their arms. And for a dozen overs it paid off, even if Groenewald got plenty of value from the edge of his bat at times. He did use the middle too, none better than when he belted a Chawla full toss down the ground for 6. In the end, these two added 42 and were only 2 runs away from a third batting bonus point when Foote on 11 drove Craig Macheda to Lewis Gregory. Groenewald was left on 36 with Chawla taking 5 for 111 out of Derbyshire's final score of 298. And that gave them a big first innings lead of 195, and Groenewald thought he had Trescothick strangled to the first ball of the afternoon session. It was going to be a huge session too. A few wickets and the visitors may have been unstoppable, and Trescothick knew that. He'd opened up with Chris Jones as Compton was suffering with a sore neck, and the makeshift opener was caught by Groenewald off Palladino with a total on 40. Trescothick was then given a life on 35 as he was dropped in the slips by Johnson, the kind of thing to really set an expectant team back. They won't have enjoyed these shots that followed as the Somerset captain started to make serious inroads into that large deficit. The plan may have been to have knocked that off with only 3 or 4 men out, and on this dry pitch that would still give them a chance of a major win. Trescothick has surprised everyone in the game that he hasn't been able to make 100 this year, but he is just beginning to find his form, and this shot took him to his 6th half-century of the first-class summer, and it had used up only 65 balls, 10 of which he'd hit with power to the boundary. His partner Compton was making a watchful start to his innings, and there was a strong appeal for a catch behind off Wainwright while he was still in the teens. Trescothick too has had some problems against spinners this summer, and it was his opposite number, Wayne Madsen, only a part-timer really, who removed him this time with a leg before decision. Trescothick was gone for 57, his top score of the summer staying at 74, but his replacement Hildreth, another to be way beneath his best this year, got moving with an early 6 off Wainwright. It had just about been Somerset's session, and they now needed to make that count in the evening one. If they could do that, then parity may have been restored by the end of the day. There had been mutterings that an ECB pitch inspector might be about to punish the home side for the dryness of this surface. At tea he gave it the all clear, and Hildreth and Compton were having few problems batting on it now, as the tables were being turned a fraction more with each over bowled. Hildreth reached his 51st. It was only his 3rd in 26 championship innings this summer, which certainly tells you more about Somerset's struggles with the bat this year than the batsman's undoubted talent. Hildreth had required 80 deliveries for this hugely significant half-century, from which he'd struck 5 fours. Compton signed a new deal at the county last month, and he will not want to go from being an England opener to a second division one in the space of a few months. His 50 arrived off 103 balls. He also hit in the fence 5 times in a partnership which would have been making Derbyshire sweat just a little on a beautiful West Country day. The partnership between these two was soon at three figures and then to the best of the match, as Hildreth moved well ahead of his partner with what had become the innings of the game to date. Derbyshire will be hopeful that the pitch becomes easier rather than more difficult to bat on as the match wears on, which has often been the case in Taunton. The lead for the home side stood at 11 when Wainwright chucked in a quicker ball which Hildreth dragged onto his stumps to go for a match-changing 81. Craig Keyswetter now entered the fray and pulled Madsen for a 6, only to be bowled off the edge by Shivnarine Chanderpaul to the very last ball of the day. It was only the 58th first-class wicket for the West Indian in his 23-year career. And what a time to get it! It meant that Somerset will begin the penultimate day on 231 for 4, with Compton still going strongly on 64 after 3.5 hours of crease occupation. That gives the home side a lead of just 36, and the next session will be yet another big one.